Your ability to give strong presentations is one of the most underrated but valuable skills that you can have in business, school, or working life in general. The issue is a lot of the advice on how to become a good presenter makes it sound overly complex and unnecessarily complicated. But in reality, it's actually pretty simple if you just know the right things to do. So for the next few minutes, let me show you 5 techniques that you can use to give insanely good presentations. The first technique will really set you off on the right foot, and that is to pinpoint your presentation's goal. Really get crystal clear. This allows you to begin with the end in mind so you can show your audience where you're leading them. So why does this technique work? Well, a clear goal transforms your presentation from just an information dump into a powerful call to action. If you lock this down first, you'll find it far easier to work on the rest of your presentation. So how do you implement this technique? I want you to start with one question. What exactly do you want your audience to do after your presentation? I want you to forget vague objectives like update the leadership team or present Q4 results, because this isn't going to work to bring your audience along with you. So let's talk about some better examples of stronger, more concrete presentation goals. Maybe you're a sales director and you might say, by the end of my presentation, I need the CFO to approve a $2 million budget increase for expanding our sales team in the Southeast region. Or maybe you're a product manager and you might say, after my presentation, I want 3 key engineers from the mobile team to volunteer for our new AR project launching next quarter. Or maybe you're an HR leader and you might say, my goal is to convince our CEO to delay the office reopening plan by 6 months and instead invest $500,000 in remote collaboration tools. Do you notice how these goals are all specific? They're measurable and they're actionable. They're not just about sharing information, they're about driving real outcomes. If you show your audience where you're going, you're far more likely to get them engaged and on board. So now let's look at the second technique, mastering the art of structuring a presentation. Great presentations are just like great stories. They have a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. So why does this technique work? Well, a structured presentation ensures that you have maximum impact by keeping you moving through your presentation without distraction or meandering. It also builds a story that moves your audience to action. How do you implement this technique? First, you want to open with impact, and this has to hit within your first 90 seconds. So you'll start with a surprising fact or a question to create curiosity. You'll share a relevant personal story to bring your audience into your world. Then you'll present your compelling problem, letting them know what the key issue is. And last, you'll paint a picture of what's possible, showing them why they should listen so that they'll want to stay with you in the presentation until the end. Now you're going to build your case, and this is the meat of your presentation. Here I want you to present no more than 3 main points, and I want you to support each point with evidence and stories. You'll need to address any potential objections before they arise within your presentation. And you'll want to use signpost phrases to guide your audience. Things like, this brings us to our next point. Then you'll want to make sure that you close memorably. Circle back to your opening, remembering your audience as part of the story and reminding them of all of its parts. You'll summarize your key takeaways, and then you'll end with that clear call to action, that goal that you set up in our first technique. If you can, leave time for questions as well. The aim of this structure is to ensure that each part of the presentation flows naturally into the next. Now let's review technique number 3. Prepare visually engaging slides to help you communicate your message. Creating a professional presentation isn't just about the content, not about just what you say, but it's about how you present it. Now, why does this technique work? Well, many presenters make the common mistake of using their presentations as a crutch, reading the text off of each slide instead of just using it as a visual aid that reinforces their talking points. We as humans are visual learners. So when you combine the visual element with what your audience is hearing, it helps to communicate your message more effectively. So how can you implement this technique? This is where an AI tool like Piktochart comes into play. In Piktochart, you can use the visual generator to create a presentation in no time. You'll start by inputting your presentation's main goal that we discussed in technique number 1, and then you'll choose from various options for formatting the presentation. You might choose a pitch deck, an educational presentation, a training, or something else. Then you'll get multiple options that align with your goal and your style. Afterward, you'll get the presentation's foundation and structure in seconds. Then you can go ahead and customize your choice of the template, edit the content, the colors, the fonts, and even upload your own images or choose some from the Piktochart stock library. After you set this up, you want to make sure to implement some design best practices. And these include things like choosing 2 to 3 complementary colors and using them consistently. You'll want to have ample white space to prevent visual clutter in your presentation. And you'll want to strategically use icons to highlight key points. You'll also want to include relevant images to reinforce your message. Remember, your presentation tells a story. And like any good story, think of each slide as a chapter that visually connects to the whole narrative. Now that your presentation is shaping up, let's talk about technique number 4. Keep your audience hooked by making your presentation presentation interactive and memorable. When your audience feels involved, they're more likely to remember your presentation and act on your message. That's really the difference between a presentation that ends with some polite applause and one that leads to real change. So here are 3 key elements to help you use this technique. First, you'll need to learn to read the room. Think of your presentation as a conversation, not a performance. To do this, you'll watch for some audience signals. Things like nodding and note-taking mean that you're on track. But if you see people scrolling their phones or fidgeting in their seats, it might be time for you to go back and switch things up to make sure that you get back on track. The second element is to create moments of interaction. Let's face it, nobody likes being talked at for an hour. Here's how to make your next presentation interactive. You can ask the audience specific questions, like who's faced this challenge before? Or you can use quick polls with your audience. Raise your hand if, stand up if. Getting them moving and engaged works well here. And the third key is to make it personal. Remember, you started your presentation strong by sharing a story that your audience could relate to. So you're going to keep them engaged by weaving in examples from their industry, especially using phrases and terms that make sense to them. You can use we and you language to make your audience participants in the conversation. The best presentations don't just inform, they spark conversations and inspire action. So keep it genuine, respond to your audience's energy, and end with that clear call to action that gets them excited about the next steps. Now we're on to technique number 5, and this one may surprise you. Have you ever wondered how some presenters seem so natural on stage and you're certain it must just be that they were born that way? It isn't. Their secret is practice, and they do it early and often. So why does this technique work so well? Because each focused practice session brings you closer to delivering your message with impact. The more that you prepare, the more natural you'll feel on your presentation day. So how can you implement this technique? Here are 3 key steps that you can take. First, start early and practice with purpose. You'll want to schedule at least 5 focused practice sessions before your big day. Here's what you'll want to focus on. Time yourself. Add a 10% buffer to your target duration because you can always fill time with Q&A if you finish early, but racing to finish on time won't give you your desired results. Record yourself. This will help you catch your filler words. You might say or like, and instead you can learn to pause rather than filling that space. Practice your slide transitions until they're smooth and you're comfortable using whatever software or system that you'll be using live. Check your posture and your gestures in a mirror or a recording. You want to appear engaged with the audience, not stiff. So move around as you feel comfortable. Second, your goal is to master your content, not your script. A very common mistake is trying to memorize every word, and this will keep you from really engaging with your audience. Instead, create a simple 1-page outline with your key messages and transitions. Practice explaining each point in different ways, noting how your slides work with each version. You will want to know your opening and closing statements by heart because these are your key engagement points, so you really want to be sure that those land. You'll want to prepare backup stories for each main point just in case the one that you used didn't quite land. You'll want to write down and practice answers to some very likely questions so that you're prepared. Third, focus on these key delivery elements. Pause for 3 seconds after key points. That'll give it some time to sink in. Project your voice to the back of the room. You'll show confidence and engage your audience. Keep your gestures controlled and purposeful. And take deep breaths between sections to maintain your pace. After all of this practice, you may still feel a little bit nervous, but keep in mind that you're not aiming for perfection. Your goal is to connect with your audience. Now, earlier in this video, I mentioned that using AI is a no-brainer for making great presentations and coming up with really professional ones. So the next step is for you to take action and to use it for yourself. But the issue is you might not already know how to do that on your own. So click here to check out the next video where we will go over how to make killer presentations using AI in a fraction of the time it would take you otherwise, so you can rock your next presentation. I'll see you there.